there is no boundaries, there is no boxes, there's nothing saying what you can and can't do. I think you and I both can tell society's got labels, you need to fit in certain boxes and quotas, whereas I think an art perspective or sport, rules are there to be broken to certain, and obviously there's fine lines between what is sportsmanship and gamemanship, but as in it allows you to test the boundaries and find like who you are. So if that's through sport or if that's through like artistic medium, try it, everything and anything, and then you'll find something that you like.
Today's guest is my friend James Owen Roberts, a coach, two-time Paralympian, TEDx speaker, author, and the host of Mindset podcast. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me on, Anita.
So, James, what is one of the most courageous things you have done after I've just read that out? Can you possibly pick one?
I would have to say I'd have to go like really to the beginning, probably as a child of overcoming the disability in the first place. And why I say that, Anita, is because I think it's more, if I bring it into like the present day, is conversations I've having in passing with the well, we'll call it a general public, as the people in society, in be it, you know, supermarkets, people coming up to me in conversations in the queues or the lines for the Americans, and obviously talking about, you know, because I'm in shorts today as I'm speaking to you, but as in I'm normally in shorts most of the time, so it's ever present and it's pretty much in your face. So I think the courageousness of not allowing a disability or something that could be a limiting factor stop me from doing obviously what you talked about in the introduction. So I've always had kind of a mindset instilled into me, be it from my mother and my grandmother and my aunt especially, to we're not going to perceive you as having a disability, even though you physically do have an impairment, but kind of going, well, here's the ceiling, go and reach for it. I probably lived up to those moments as a youngster, especially as a teenager, to if I was told no, okay, come on, watch me and see what happens.
Exactly. So what is it like growing up with a disability?
I think it's to give some people some scope into it. I think mentally it's on reflection, and it's something that I looked at during the pandemic, especially to having conversations with other podcasters and being interviewed myself. It got me to look at it maybe from a different context and a different perspective, to kind of going, well, what is adversity? Because obviously I'm living and breathing it every day. If I put it back to what I said earlier about having conversations with people in random places of the supermarket, people perceive it as, oh, it must be difficult. And with me having a disability all my life, I think having that mindset that I've been brought upon as, okay, you can't have pity for yourself, you can't have all this doom and gloom. If I were to take it from a perspective of somebody else got it worse somewhere in the world than I would do, and to be gracious in that. So I think where I looked upon it, gosh, now it's almost 3-4 years ago, of okay, let me have this conversation with my family that are still with us, to kind of going, well, okay, I know what it's like for me. What was it like for you, having the bird's eye perspective of society, maybe judging, etc. So I could have maybe a broader perspective of what adversity. So I probably never be able to relate to, I won't say an ordeal, but as in some of the comments my mum received when I was a toddler and things like that. You're thinking, well, it's more difficult for the family in question because society to some degree has come a long way in my lifetime of almost 40 years, but as in the perspective of probably London 2012 itself has changed people's perception towards disability in general, because it's pretty mainstream, especially my disability, because you're going to see prosthetics, you're going to see artificial legs. I think people have got more of a freedom and a pride of mine pretty much as it comes. I've taken things off it as I've grown older, because it's like, well, is it a necessity? The
Mhm,
padding,
mhm,
no. Okay, we'll get rid of it. It's less for work for you in the NHS, and it's less
mhm,
cumbersome for me, and then we'll go from there. So I think the coming to terms with it, I think it's been an evolution a little bit of
mhm,
maybe if we go to preteens, it was difficult because all my friends able-bodied, we call quote unquote normal, whatever that means.
mhm,
I as I grew older and started to, I don't want to use this slang kind of thing, find myself as a teacher to see where I fitted in the world, it probably was more troublesome because it's like, well, it's an extra, I don't want to go as far as a burden, but as in it was problematic as the older I got because I think in primary school, used to love it. Used to love it.
yeah.
It always breaking. Oh yeah, I get a day off school. The older I got and I got into secondary school, now it's becoming cumbersome and it's becoming a problem because I'm
Mm,
falling somewhat behind people because of no fault of my own. And if we fast forward to probably now in my later teens, what you mentioned is obviously it's opened a massive
mhm,
door and it's
mhm,
enabled me to realize a dream that I had as a young child of being a professional athlete. So I got to some extent when people ask, well, what was your dream as a young child? I was one of the probably small percentage, if not like microcosm, to actually be able to do that, and that's all
wow.
because of having a disability. So I think it's ebbed and flowed. There's good, there's bad, there's highs, there's lows.
Mm,
It's probably taken getting wiser as I've got older to kind of going, well, it's not all bad. It's not all through rose tinted glasses. It's enabled me to travel the globe, to represent my
mm.
country for a long, long time. Not a lot of people get to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant journey to have, but we'll just go into that in a moment. So, how did your journey of sport start?
I've got to thank my family for that on both sides. My mother
Mm,
and my father side of the family are very, very sporty. It was my mother, I would have been 10 or 11 years old. She wanted to find a sport that my disability, I'm going to say a liability, where it couldn't be taken advantage of, be it, like
mm,
football, soccer, basketball, that
mm,
kids could literally run circles around me. So to her credit, she thought about swimming. So that's where I started in competitive sport. And through herself and my first coach, they came up with, we're going to say, a plan or a solution as how can
mm,
we find a stroke or a discipline within that sport that James's strengths come to the fore. So I started swimming butterfly, I think I was about 11 or 12. So relatively young in that league because I was built like a house. You can see me, but as in for people watching
mm,
on YouTube,
mm,
I was actually bigger than this as a 11,
mm,
12, 13 year old, like outwards. It was through that to kind of going, well, let's use the God given talent that been given to an extent. I'm very, very strong upper body wise, and went from there. Was a meteoric rise pretty quickly. Got into disability sport at about 16. So I was in able-bodied
mm,
sport for about 4 or 5 years before I got it. So my perspective towards disabled sport was probably like the mainstream is, well, it's almost like a token gesture. It's an add-on and it's an afterthought. It's not like the Olympics. So my perception to what it is now, 20 odd years later, has massively
mm,
changed. It was a chance conversation I had with a later coach, still with the same team out in Belgium. Chance conversation on the day was, what's your thoughts about doing disability sport? Obviously I knew about it, didn't know how to get into it. Obviously the younger generation now that are teenagers and younger, you've got the likes of Instagram, YouTube, you name it. It's very easy to get access to the top athletes, the top, because you could
yeah.
send a message to kind of go,
Mm,
okay, I like the look of this. The internet's in its infancy in the early 2000s, like late 1990s. So you've got to pick up the telephone and things like that. So
mm,
I've got to give credit to my mom because she went, gosh, far and beyond probably any parent to some extent to put me in the position to lay the breadcrumbs. I think she won't mind me sharing this, but as in, she was scared of my grandmother when she
mm,
was alive to kind of going, well, not put James in the position to start on that journey to be successful. Ultimately,
mm,
it's going to lie with me whether or not I am or I don't. And then within the space of 18 months, if we fast forward from the age of 16, I was in the British development squad. Could say right place, right time, had the talent, and I got the bug to kind of going, well, I'm getting closer and closer to the
mm,
Paralympics. I've obviously got to kick the door down, go from there to, I've got to give massive credit to Disability Sport Wales, because they laid the foundations to, you were almost like in the mentorship to a certain extent. You looked up to the older athletes to kind of going, well, you're there, I've got all these questions, how do I do it? And they would never not deviate from it and kind of going, well, this is how I did it. I'm not saying your journey is going to be the same. It was almost like the donkey and the carrot. It's like, oh, I want to climb this pedestal and climb this ladder little by little. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in swimming. I'd gone to university by that time in Swansea in South Wales. Probably looking back, it was probably a very, very, very good decision to go to university in Wales, because literally had a conversation with, he's no longer alive. He died last year, not too long ago. To go in and go, well, let's not lose the raw talent you've got. I was a little bit more skeptical back then of, not quite sure about this. I don't know what to do. Pick up the phone and spoke to my mum. This is the beginning of my TEDx talk, so it will shock people. She doesn't remember saying the exact words. It stuck with me like it did. But you could be very, very good or absolutely useless. You say that to any competitive individual, they're going to run with it. I think maybe somebody that's a little bit more tentative would see that as a negative and positive. I perceived it as, if I'm very, very good, I stay in a sport that I obviously went on to go to Paralympics in rowing. If that wasn't the case, there'd have probably been, I could probably name another 3 sports that was on that list that I would have been trying next. A massive rise from the space of, I would have been 16, going into disability sport. I went to my first Paralympics 3-4 years later, if memory serves me right. So and I had a 10-year career after that. So it seems like a long time ago. Well, it is over 10 years since I retired. So, but it seems like such a long time ago. We're only talking about just over maybe 15 years.
So what was that seed that wanted you to take the journey of wanting to be, at that time, did you realize, a Paralympian?
I've always wanted to be a professional athlete. So I think realized as a young teenager, I'm not going to be a professional footballer. I'm not going to be able to play in the NBA. I'm disabled. I'm not saying it's impossible, highly improbable for somebody to do it. I'm not going to say it can't ever be done, because technology might evolve tenfold and it becomes possible. For me, it's the next best thing. The disabled sport is the pinnacle. So it's the best you can do in terms of getting there. Is the best you can do in disabled sport. So everybody is trying to get there. And well, it would have been, if I'd have medaled, it probably would have made it 10 times. It made it not 10 times sweet, but it made it a little bit better. But as in, if it was that easy, everybody would do it, and it would take some of the gloss off of it. So what's, to come back to your question, Anita, of what, I don't know. I've never thought about it like that. It's just something that I wanted to do. So I think because everybody was doing it, that most of my peers, my entourage, and the people I hung out were athletes, and that's what they endeavored to do themselves. I guess it's, you are, the saying goes, you are the 5 people you surround yourself. So I think it was circumstantial to a certain extent, that it just happened that it was something, I won't say it's a nice accolade to have, because ultimately people would probably say, well, why that and maybe not something else. But I think it was a goal that I wanted to achieve. I think the dangling carrot for me was the gold medal. And I've spoken to enough retired athletes myself on my podcast to kind of going, well, I was maybe a little bit naive to use that as the motivational factor most of the time, because that's going to not motivate you a lot of the time, because, okay, as we're recording, it's almost June. And we're in the UK, it doesn't actually look like that. So the motivational factors in the winter is not going to get you out of bed all the time. So that's maybe where having a mindset coach, having sports psychology, and I would have maybe been a little bit more open to the idea, as I am now, to new ideas, to kind of going, well, what is the short-term goals that you need to put in? What are medium-term goals? Why is it that it's important to you to achieve said goal, and to really look deep down as well, okay, what are small milestones along the way that you need to hit in order to get to this medal? I know, I think people will probably say to me, I I don't go to such depths to a certain extent all the time, but they're like, well, why do you put your performance under a microscope? It's been bred into me since I was
Yeah.
15, 16 years old. It's not ideal all the time, because
Mhm.
obviously it's going to be a burden to a certain extent on your mental health, because ultimately if you're analyzing something to a minuscule amount and it doesn't need to be, or to a certain extent, well, sport is probably, it's not life, but as in there's a lot of variables that are you can try. I can't control my opposition. Life is very much like that. If I was to go to that level and kind of go, well, okay, I need to control this, I need to control that, I need to, you can't do it, because ultimately
Yes.
it's going to become problematic, because you're going to go, well, I need to control these tangibles that I can't control. I've got better at that, to kind of going, well, okay, we lost. It's sport. It's not the end of the world. Okay, my 20s and my teens, that was a big deal.
Yeah, of course.
Winning and losing was, I won't say catastrophic, but as in, my mother grew up with me, so she knew how volatile I could be with my
Mhm.
emotions. To it was, if I didn't do to the level that I deemed I was capable of, it was catastrophic. The world is imploded. But I soon, I think, probably got a bit wiser and a bit older and a bit level-headed, to, through conversations with her, to kind of going, your uncle and aunt aren't like me. They don't maybe see that, well, you're distraught, you're hurting, and but to
Yeah.
kind of have a bit of more empathy and sympathy to other people's feelings, to kind of go, they come and see you moping about, doesn't help anybody else. And I think I got older after the fact, so I try not to mope about results too much now, to kind of going, well, okay, as we were recording this, I've had national playoffs about 2 weeks ago,
Wow.
and I would kind of taking some of the responsibility on my shoulders. We lost by 2 points. And I've watched the game back and kind of going, you can't take the sole responsibility for the loss on yourself. The team could have won, but that's coulda, shoulda, woulda. But as in, to kind of going, it's not all your responsibility to, okay, in parts I didn't play well, but to kind of going, well, okay, use that experience going forward as a learning curve, to kind of going, well, okay, you can't play in some of those things like that in the future. Obviously, I can't replicate the other team. I'm one of the biggest in our team, so it's a bit difficult to replicate when people are as big, because I can't do it. But to use it as, okay, we lost. We made it closer than it has been, because we played them home and away in the league, and lost by a lot more. So the coach is pretty happy that we were in the fight. It's never nice to lose, especially when it's that close. But to get compliments from, the commentator, oh, it's the best game that I commentated on all weekend, and I mean that. Okay, it might be a token gesture, but as in, to take it on as, okay, you're not going to say comments like that, because generally, I think close games, intense ones, it's good for the neutral. It's not nice for either team, because somebody's got to lose and somebody's got to win.
Yeah.
And ultimately, everybody would love to win. And I come from that generation, so do you, that it ultimately, it teaches you, there's more life lessons to be taught from losing than to winning, because women can paint over cracks. So, okay, it's gonna be, training was nice to go back. We got given the week off, and to reflect. I was jumping at the bid to go back to training. We get a month off in a couple of weeks, but
Yeah.
I think it gives you that hunger to go back to, okay, I don't want this feeling to happen again. So was I like that 10, 15 years? No. I've had to evolve. Okay, I was early 20s, and I'm learning about myself. People will give you positive traits, especially to athletes. They're kind of going, well, they're dedicated, they're passionate, they're driven. I can think of probably a lot of negative traits that are exactly the same, and they're the same. They're the same thing. Single-mindedness, self-centered. The same things, but that's what makes these individuals successful. I'll come back to, and it's got me thinking now of your question of, why did I want to do that? I think because it was given to us at 15, 16, and it's hard off memory now, I'm going to do it. It was a triangle on a PowerPoint of your education, your sport, and your social life, and one's got to go. I'm still to this day not very much a social butterfly anyway. So
Okay.
for me, that was an easy decision to kind of let's get rid of that.
Mhm.
The education is a no brainer because I got no choice. In Europe, you got to go. It's going this way in the UK, as in mandatory till you're 18
Mhm. Mhm.
now anyway. But as in at that time, I had another 2-3 years of education, and I had no choice. Okay, I can't change. I'd love to change it, and I'll be honest with people, and be honest with you, Anita. I would love to maybe be able to leave at 16 if I had a choice, because
Yeah.
I was all right academically. I just
Mhm.
wasn't inclined to put my foot forward when it came to that. It irritates my mum and it irritates my dad that if I had the same level of perseverance and willingness that I do in
Mhm.
sport to
Mhm.
literally wreck my
Mhm.
body with my mind, I probably would have done pretty well in the classroom. I was happy with it being above average. It's not a regret. I might change it to kind of going maybe learn a bit quicker to kind of going, well, I can be book smart and be very gifted athletically and then go from there. With that, I think it is that because I had that laser focus that that's what I wanted to do from the very, very beginnings of really as I can remember, I think about 5 or 6, to okay, that's the goal. Don't know how I'm gonna get there. Don't care how I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there one way or another.
Mhm.
So it's probably that doggedness of I don't care who I hurt. I'm not painting myself very well now, but as in to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's almost like if
Mhm.
you're not on this road with me, better get out of the way because I'm not gonna be very polite with it. I'm gonna either you need to see that you need to get out of the way, or I'm gonna go
Mhm.
right through you. The amount of athletes I've spoken to down the years, be it who've had podcasts or been on my show, think exactly the same way, and people that haven't been very competitive, they think it's very odd, and obviously you can relate to it. You would be
Mhm.
in mindset. You would see like the tangibles of okay, I can't be like that anymore. Can't just plow through somebody just because I don't agree with their opinion. I know society works like that to a certain extent. Of if we don't get along, I'm going to cancel you. Okay, I'm still back in the day of what a debate is for. If we have a discussion or opinion and we don't agree, we agree to disagree and we go separate ways, or we maybe come together in the future and we might change our
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
But the win at all costs mentality, I'll fight my battles. Ultimately, there's loyalty involved because the things that
Mhm.
I've watched on social media, you're thinking, I can see why I still run through a brick wall for a coach because they've got you. Okay, I've been with the same team in basketball for over 10 years.
Yeah.
That generally will ask how you're doing because he cares about you. So I think it's some
Mhm.
subconscious, and I had like the mindset on
Mhm.
and mindfulness on for a second to kind of going. I can see why the players made it a battle because we also play for regions, and North Wales is not, generally speaking, if it's on the news, is not good news. We'd probably go the extra yard because the person, if you're there for them to take some of the burden, I do social media for the team, but that's because I wanted to do it and I thought I could do a better job. That's why I took it on, and I've obviously been, I won't say,
Yeah.
but I haven't been responsibly put onto me. Some of the time it is to kind of going,
Mhm.
well, run it past the team to kind of go, what's this look like? Oh, maybe change this, but
Mhm.
we'll leave some of the license to you because you obviously do it. But so I'll take on board feedback to kind of go, yeah, I see what you're suggesting. Yeah, that was better. We'll go with that. But then that allows the coach to coach.
Okay.
So they
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
to worry about all the you
Mhm.
mentioned before and with the techie
Mhm.
stuff. I quite like not this specific tech stuff because it's out of my depth as well. But as in, I like the graphic stuff. I like to do
Mhm.
the video, and so people will come to me. Well, what does this look like? It's like, well, I'm not a videographer, but I can give you my opinion as well. I was taking the mick out one of our juniors because he sent me a video about consistency. I think it's a TikTok.
Okay.
And I went, I think you used the same clip 4 times. He went, no, they're 4 different clips. It's like, no. They don't look like it though. It looks like it would look better from a perspective of entertainment, if you did, because ultimately consistency, it should be the same thing over and over and over again. If I look probably in data, I'll probably find that it's slightly different, but I was just taking the mic to kind of going, oh no, it's not. Like, well, I'm gonna make you up your game, because ultimately you'll want to do better with that, because but then it gets a sport that is very popular in this country from a participation perspective, but it's maybe not in the mainstream until the Paralympics come around in a couple of weeks. And then people go, well, that looks very rumble tumble, very very physical, very very. It's like, well, it can be and it can't, and sometimes it's not. I'd have to agree with them. Of the playoffs, I got knocked about a bit. Even went through a referee, but that wasn't on purpose. That was an accident. They even kind of went after it. They went, "Oh, James, are you coming to finish the referee off?" I was like, that's not funny. That's not funny. Not funny. To give some people some. I'll send you the video so you can see it.
Yeah, sure.
I hit the referee with the chair, and his knee hyperextended.
Oh.
So I don't know what that's got to feel like when the foot's planted. I don't know why I didn't get out of the way, because I ended up through the hoardings. So I was gonna get the ball at any cost. I've seen the video back. There's 5 people go to see him. Just my coach to see if I'm all right. I think the adrenaline's with referees not, but that went. I think the clip didn't go viral. A few people shared it to kind of go in, let's hustle. Some people might think I'm nuts. The hoardings are only cardboard, so this doesn't hurt. If it would have been maybe, I don't know, a football one in a state, I'd have thought twice to kind of go, no, I don't want to really hit that. I think in the heat of the moment, you don't think of things like that. It goes back to that DNA of, well, you're in a final. Anything can happen. It's bittersweet to lose by so close. Considering it was with the Scottish team, so it was almost a Celtic rivalry. It's very ferocious on court, but he's very gracious once the final whistle goes. So it's kind of odd to kind of go in, and because their team is a lot of juniors, they're asking, "Are you all right?" After you're thinking that doesn't make any sense, but that's probably showing my age a little bit to kind of going, well, I might congratulate you and commiserate with you. I won't apologize. It's happened. It's 40 minutes. It's a war. War battle to a certain extent. I won't say war, and somebody's going to come out a victor and somebody's going to come out a loser. But for me, that's been ingrained with me 25 years in 2 years. Mentality to put your body through the ring. Some people might think I'm nuts to still do it to a fairly high level, but obviously it's the social side of it, the camaraderie, mental health aspects of it. Most of the players are disabled, so it's one of the arenas that you don't feel disabled other than the chair.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the amount of sledging, banter that goes on court in training, it's almost like normalized to, we're going to view you for your ability. You just happen to have, I don't know, missing legs, spinal injury, cerebral palsy. I'm going to probably miss out disability, but as in, you're almost, for the newer people that come into the sport or start very young in the junior section, it's almost like normalizing the disability. It's not something that is, if I use the example of my coach is in his 50s, and I've learned he went to, obviously we'll call it special education, as in disabled people went to different paths of education. I'm only about 15 years younger. I went to mainstream school. So this aspect of, could call it segregation. I didn't have it as much. You still hear about it a little bit. I found a bit odd, because you're thinking, well, P should be able to adapt its physical education at the end of the day to, if somebody's in my disability is not too bad, because obviously I'm playing wheelchair sport, but I can walk, so I could do basketball, I could do football, I know I did gymnastics in primary school, because I can remember doing it. It looked very, very, there's no video or anything like that, but it was probably very, very odd. Probably would have been okay, in mainstream school in this country nowadays, because I would probably
Mm-hmm.
be able to say to a teacher, okay, you got to give me allowance for maybe doing an adaptive sport, because then
Yeah.
this is where I can somewhat show my skill set, and then okay, if you mark me down for whatever for football and things like that, don't take it personally. That's life. I'm not
Yeah.
a footballer, or I'm not that. It's the same with maybe say the academic one.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
Yeah.
generally the ones that are sporty. They see PE and think, oh yeah, I get more PE. But if they could somehow tweak the curriculum and get the ones that are going to do well in the exams, to kind of going, this is from experience, because I did sports science at university. It's more classroom based, more it's the practical elements, but anatomy, physiology, biomechanics
Yeah.
is very very much textbook stuff. It's not difficult, but as in you're going down the lines of physical therapy and doctors for what you need to
Yeah.
know. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to, maybe this will never happen, but this is my opinion, that maybe in secondary school they need to get more of the people that say hate the subject, because
Yeah.
it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because exercise, from a certain extent, takes courage,
Yeah.
from my opinion, and working in coaching, because to walk into a gym, a CrossFit box, it takes a lot of guts, especially somebody that is, coming back from heart attack, stroke, that obesity, maybe have diabetes, that their mind's playing on tricks on them to kind of going, well, what's somebody else going to think? Ultimately, there's going to be some of those people in that environment. They're few and far between, but as in, if people were to maybe be, and this is something I thought to myself, to kind of, it's not very enticing environment, it's not very accommodating. I think CrossFit to a certain extent is more so than a normal gym. But if people were to remember the first day they walk through the doors themselves, to kind of going, well, okay, what support do you need? Blah 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 blah. You know where I am if you've got questions. Don't feel uncomfortable if you don't know how to use XYZ. Okay,
Yeah.
this applies to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the courageousness, if they were to bring that in from an educational standpoint at 15, 16 years old, would probably do no end of good, because ultimately then there's new sets of ideas coming in from, say, the likes of, I'll use myself as the example, because that would be my reason to go into PE at GCSE. I get to do sport. I get an extra couple hours a week to do what I want to do. But
Absolutely.
you forget about, it's a conversation I had with my cousin, who's a retired
Okay.
physio. It's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went to do sports science, because they went, the degree is more difficult. Her sister was a doctor. They went, you gonna take 4 years to train what it takes a doctor 70. I went, no, that's not for me then. I'm gonna go do a different subject. And it just happened to, as my sport was taking off, that's when I was thinking about going to university. So I got to be the guinea pig with biomechanics, physiology. This
Yeah.
looks quite interesting to be prodded and things like that. So that's why I got into sports science. So because I wanted to end up towards my end of my degree, I did sports psychology, because I saw it
Yeah.
as more beneficial than the other two.
Was one of my questions. I think you've just answered it. What it was it like balancing your academics and your sports? But my other question, you've kind of answered some of it as well. But I'm gonna ask anyway. Where does your perseverance come from? Because you have to have a certain amount of mindset to get to this point.
I think family. I think 100% family,
Mhm.
because my mum is a single parent, so
Mhm.
that takes a lot of perseverance to balance bringing up a child, working, to a certain extent being both parents,
Yeah, absolutely.
and being the best that she could from a male perspective. I won't say my mum was strict. I don't like silence, but that was my punishment if I was naughty. This is the silent treatment, because the other way didn't work. but as in the perseverance, I think is from family to being given the tools of hard work, things like that. Because it's probably built into the DNA, British DNA, to a certain extent of step
Yeah,
off a lip,
definitely.
you get on with it. So I think
Mhm.
the perseverance of, okay, I've not succeeded this time. I've never thought about this, but then this is the black and white of it. You've got two choices. You
Yeah.
either green and bear it and you go again, or you quit. There is a grey area, but as in it's still a form of quitting. So I think for me, it's probably the upbringing, because my grandmother, see if I get this right, ambulance driver during the war.
Oh, wow.
So I think
Mhm.
the perspective that
Mm.
I've had to endure. Okay, it was in North Wales, so
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Liverpool would be on fire, but as in to a certain extent, perseverance, I think, or courage. And you see, it's a week. We were a week away from the 18th remembrance of D-Day. So what I've endured is nothing. My uncle he died a couple of months ago, but he was on the second wave of he was a Royal Engineer. He probably didn't talk about some of the things that he probably saw.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
So to a certain extent, I think of my mum working in NATO for so long. I had the say a privilege to be around the history and to learn about it, and I was a bit of a history buff as well, so I did like to learn about the wars. Mum just come back from a trip to Egypt, so I've been to I like to learn about stuff that's happened throughout history, and you can learn from, and obviously take on board and go forward. So I think the perseverance is to a certain extent subconscious, because
Yeah.
it's just been brought up to
Yeah.
kind of going, well, you're not going to be wrapped up in cotton wool. I've got to remind myself occasionally to kind of go, because people I had a conversation last week. Somebody went, you don't really talk about your disability in a negative way, like, have pity. It's like, because that's how I've been brought up to kind of, I will do that occasionally, but that's like the last resort, the last straw, to kind of go, I'm falling on deaf ears, I'm going to use the card. I won't do it normally, but as in the perseverance is, well, you've created an obstacle. How do I go round it, over it, through it, underneath it? Okay.
Because that goes on to my next question really well. Were there any difficult moments in your athletic career? Because let's be honest, you shouldn't have been able to walk, let alone do some of the things you have gone ahead and achieved, James.
There's many a roadblock that could have derailed it. I think the adversity of so many examples. Teacher in secondary school say I would amount to nothing because I wasn't doing very well academically. I think subconsciously that's not been great, because that's reared its ugly head a few times in later life, to kind of going, you're looking for where you fit in the world, your values and things like that. So I have to kind of question that, to the kind of going, well, do you believe that, James? Because ultimately, you've gone and proved that to be untrue as a belief. From a sporting sense, being dropped by swimming,
Okay.
that wasn't particularly great, because I thought I was going to be a regular student, and that obviously didn't happen. Being reclassified in rowing, I think swimming and rowing weren't too bad, because the writing was on the wall like the year before, so I kind of had a warning shot. 2004, I nearly got dropped. Mom knew I'd made the team, but they didn't want to tell me so they could get a better performance out of me. Didn't happen. I performed worse, and then I got the news of, I almost broke down in tears, because I went, oh gosh, here's my life changing moment. Oh, you made the team. When did you tell me? And I might have swum better. I might have made no difference whatsoever. With the rowing, as a team, we knew about it the year before, so it was a conversation I had with the performance director, coach, and the Welsh coach about, are you going to come back for last hurrah? Yeah, we'll come back for the ride. I didn't ride it out on the white horse, but that writing was. So they're not really adverse moments. They could have been somewhat catastrophic. I think if I put it in perspective of what's going on in the world now, they're nothing to a certain extent, because they're not life or death. Probably the one that was the most difficult was, I've only said this publicly like once or twice, of it was my own head. It wasn't in it anymore. So I retired in 2013. And it feels like a long time ago. I always, to a certain extent, probably to appease my own belief, to kind of go, oh, you retired because you were injured, your head wasn't in it. It's like, no, you quit because you lost sight of why you got in the first place. It's one way to look at it. I wasn't enjoying sport anymore. It was, I'll put it lightly, a job. It was a chore. And obviously I've painted a nice picture that, to travel the world. It's not that difficult a job of training. Okay, between 18 and 30 hours a week. It's a full-time job, but as in that's 6 days a week. It's not that difficult compared to, well, I'll use a 9 to 5, and I use the bit run your own business is even more difficult. But they're not difficult in comparison because I'm exercising 4 to 6 hours a day.
Wow.
And that's all I got to do. So get up, eat, train, and repeat. Don't make it look to be. Obviously, it's very demanding physically, mentally as well. But as in comparison, if I had maybe sat down with a psychologist, mindset coach to kind of go, this is how I feel. Okay, as a male, it's very difficult to do that. Back then, I probably could do it quite easily. This is how I feel. This is the trajectory I feel that I'm going on. So I feel like I'm just on the hamster wheel and I'm going through the motions. What do I need to refresh? What do I need to do? Okay, at 26, probably wouldn't be having that conversation, and I know that. So, but as in, that's probably the biggest obstacle I face, is probably coming to terms with that, to kind of going, well, back in the day, you using any excuse under the sun as to why you retired. And then be moaning when I used it as figuratively. I exited stage right, and then where's my round of applause? But theatre doesn't work like that. Your round of applause for a performance well appreciated. You've had a thing, and it was all negative mindset that was kicking in, jealousy, envy. Why am I not getting this? Why am I not getting that? My podcast, to a certain extent, has been probably a godsend, because it allowed me to get access to sports psychologists, other athletes, to kind of going, well, okay, how did you get to where you are now? If I was figuratively, I'll use the one in question I've not listened to in a few years, but I went, if this person was to do A, B, C, D and expecting to get X, Y, Z, what would you say to them? I listened back to that episode about 3 times myself. I was talking, it was for me, but people, if people go listen to it, they probably could tell. I was expecting to be handed things based on my God-given talent. That was it. And other people were doing more work.
Yeah, because that is my next question, actually. You host the Mindset Athlete podcast. Tell me more about it, James.
It started off originally to give people a perspective of, I'm going to probably go deeper than mainstream media, because I've been there, got the t-shirt. I've been asked some silly questions down the years, to kind of going, well, okay, that's a stupid question, but I'll answer it. But those things get repetitive, and you kind of don't care what the answer is eventually, because it's like robotic. It's like, okay, this is a soundbite. Then just give the athlete their time in the spotlight to kind of go, well, you can say what, well, to a certain extent, I think British athletes can't say it because they get in trouble, but as in,
of course,
there's certain things they can and can't. The American athletes are great because they say what they feel like.
absolutely.
It's literally off the sleeve, and it's like, okay, I wasn't expecting it to go like that, but hey, I'm gonna roll with this. And just to get people's honest perspective on, okay, be it somebody that does the long jump blind, that's the good YouTube video to watch.
James, what words of wisdom would you give anyone with a disability and wants to take up sport then?
I think it opens a lot of that. It definitely gives you the courageousness. I think I've been lucky to a certain extent, because I've already been given some of that perseverance and things like that from my family. It was the courageousness to maybe try something new. But sport was alien to me. But as in, for somebody that's got a disability, it improves confidence. It improves social skills. You get camaraderie. It just normalizes it. You're not deemed as disabled. And I think, obviously, for the younger generation, it's a blessing in disguise, because they don't have to deal with some of the baggage that might have to do with mainstream school, be it more so in secondary school. I wouldn't be thought it'd be a prime. So to get into this disabled sport, it allows them to be with like-minded people, and I don't think people will ask questions of the old I shouldn't really call myself the older generation, but as in once they get the confidence, they're not afraid to ask difficult questions, as in sports, or it could even be say something they're passionate about. So I like art, so say somebody it allows them to express themselves. There is no boundaries. There is no boxes. There's nothing saying what you can and can't do. I think you and I both can tell society's got labels. You need to fit in certain boxes and quotas, whereas I think art perspective or sport rules are there to be broken to certain, and obviously there's fine lines between what is sportsmanship and gamesmanship, but as in it allows you to test the boundaries and find like who you are. So if that's through sport or if that's through like artistic medium, try it, everything and anything, and then you find something that you like.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really brilliant. Yeah. So where can the listeners find you online, your book, your podcast? What's your website, James?
My website is www.jamesowenroberts.com. You can find my book through the website. You can find me on pretty much every social media platform that you can think of. And you can find my podcast, The Mindset Athlete, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Absolutely fantastic. And I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others to make a difference. I really want to acknowledge you for that, James Owen Roberts.
Oh, thank you very much, Anita.
So we are all about create the courage to be fearless. What is your definition of courage?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. Definition of courage. I would say probably challenging the status quo, because it's subjective. It's subjective what is courage. But as in, if somebody says, because we talked about this at the beginning, if somebody says it can't be done, ultimately the limiting factor is you. Because ultimately, if you believe you can achieve it, anything's possible, because ultimately where the mind goes, the body will follow.